ask me.
May I?
Of course.
Channel 7?
I know the drill.
Okay, so I just saw Dora and the Lost City of Gold. I've been hearing about how critics surprisingly found enjoyment out of this movie, and people in the cartoon community seem to be not really that pleased with it. In fact, I think a lot of people in general don't really seem to be pleased with it. Like, even the popular YouTuber Critical, a dude who I occasionally watch, he didn't seem to enjoy it. He thought it was childish. But in all honesty, I think he really only had a bad time because he was criticized for seeing it by the cashier at the movie theater, and he went alone while a bunch of kids were sitting around him. I can see how that can be a really embarrassing and uncomfortable situation, which I'll get back to at the end of this video. And in all honesty, I kind of enjoyed this movie. It's kind of funny because yesterday on my Cartoon Amino, I was talking about like my unpopular opinions. And now I'm posting about somewhat of an unpopular opinion. I'm making this video about this, and I actually like the movie. I figured it would be good from the beginning when I saw the trailer, even though the concept of a live-action Dora movie like that just sounds really stupid, to be honest. But the reason why I figured it would be good is because I looked through the resumes of the production team that was working on this movie, and a couple of writers worked on, like, DreamWorks films. The director or producer or something, I think he worked on the Muppets movie. Or no, not the Muppets movie, but the Muppets. The movie that's literally called The Muppets. And I think one of the writers also worked on a film called Sex Tape. Like, what the hell? But even though I basically predicted this movie would probably be an above average film, I didn't expect to enjoy it as much as I actually did. Isabella Monar, yeah, she does like a wonderful performance portraying the main character. It's strange, but like the fact that they stayed so true to Dora's character in this film, only with like slight differences, like her being more intelligent, which I guess is kind of a nod at the fact that this is an adaptation of like an educational children's cartoon, and her handling a lot more dangerous objects and materials such as knives and even drugs, which also makes sense because she's an explorer, and it just surprisingly works. She's still energetic and extremely happy girl with positive messages. It's pretty much one-on-one exactly the same as the Dora from the cartoon. You'd think that wouldn't be entertaining, but here's the thing. They put this completely unrealistic character in a super realistic environment, a high school, for starters. Comedy shows like Beavis and Butthead and some old SNL skits, they've done this method fairly well before, where sometimes putting an unrealistic character in a realistic environment can work really effectively if done correctly. And this movie just takes complete advantage of that. Because Dora acts like a children's show character in the real world as a teenager, she comes across as like just really, really awkward and like really crazy. And like the film is aware of how awkward a person acting like a cartoon character can be, and it's just really funny. She kind of reminded me, she's like SpongeBob, where like she knows people are mocking her, but she still acts completely oblivious to it because she's just so wrapped up in positive energy. She sings songs. She tells everyone who passes through the halls that they did a great job, even though all of them are ignoring her. She shakes hands to say thank you to the lunch ladies and lunchmen, etc. And just because of how detached she is from socialization as a child after being homeschooled throughout most of her life, which is something that can actually legitimately happen to homeschooled students, she doesn't seem to fit in at all. And because her cousin Diego did get the chance to go to public school, he's able to easily spot more social cues, and he begins to get super embarrassed by Dora. And that does lead to a troubling relationship between the two. The only problem I can kind of see with people having this setup is that, admittedly, the high school dynamic is kind of cringy and cliche. It's one of those typical hierarchy schools where there's bullies, snobby popular girls, and they even give Dora the nickname Dorka. Dora's obviously an outcast, and her only friend at first is this other super awkward guy who isn't really that funny or dynamic as Dora. He's just kind of a stereotypical awkward person. I guess the reason why I was able to forgive that though is because Dora is just so unbelievably quirky that like it's just too funny for me to even care. And the way that these characters interact with her is just really charming. Now that isn't to say Dora is like some one-dimensional character in this film. Throughout the beginning, she does start to like kind of break down because of the fact that she can't fit in, and even her cousin can't seem to deal with it. In fact, like here's a quote from the movie that oddly kind of got me. She says, I guess I never felt lonely when I was all by myself in the jungle, and now that I'm surrounded by kids, I feel alone all the time. Like, I'm gonna sound like a 14-year-old girl when I say this, but damn, that was actually kind of deep. I never expected a quote from a Dora movie to be so emotionally impactful. It's so weird. I won't go into spoiler material until later on in this next thing I'm about to say, but yeah, again, the way these characters interact and then come together is it's just kind of wholesome. The only real problems with this film is that there is kind of some forced elements. Like there's this one romantic setup between the two characters that was just completely unnecessary. You know how people like ship characters together literally just because they're standing right next to each other? That's what this romantic relationship in this movie felt like. Though there is kind of a funny gag between these two characters and how Dora reacts to them throughout the film. Yeah, it just kind of felt forced. There's also a fart joke that drags on way too long. It's not very funny at all, and yeah. And again, it's a stereotypical high school vibe that initially did make me cringe and gave me the old Nickelodeon TV movie vibes, but it's just forgiven because of Isabella Monar's performance. She honestly deserves an Oscar for this or something. I don't know. The movie also takes itself a little too seriously towards the last 10 to 20 minutes, which it isn't bad. It's just like the weakest part of the film because the comedy was just so unbelievably good. Though it is kind of wholesome to see Dora grow as a person with these people and how, like, yeah. Boots and Swiper are also very funny in this movie. They do appear, and it's very humorous. I'm gonna dive into spoiler territory right here. I suggest only listening to this if you just don't care about the movie, or if you've already seen it. Obviously, you won't care hearing this, but like, here I go. I'm going to talk about spoilers now. One thing I have to say about this movie is that it goes completely batshit crazy when they start going on the adventure. It's kind of like Sponge Out of Water, where there's just so many things happening in every scene. You start to question, like, what the hell are they going to do next? You already have this super crazy character whose comedy is off the chart, but like, it looks like a high school movie initially, but then it just becomes Lara Croft meets SpongeBob. There's a talking fox, Swiper. Then in a couple of scenes, it becomes Indiana Jones, which I can kind of see as a problem. There are a lot of traps and stuff that seem similar to Indiana Jones. And then Dora sings a song about poop, and like it's surprisingly kind of a funny joke just because of how awkward it is, even though gross out humor usually is cringy, like that fart joke is really cringy, but the poop joke I actually thought was a little bit funny just because of the awkwardness. And, you know, there's a scene where the characters get high off of gas and everything becomes traditionally animated. There's a scene where these two scorpions literally have sex on a character's head. They start mating. Dora knocks a guy out with a yo-yo to these thieves that try to kill Dora's parents. Boots talks like a freaking man. It's just insane. It's a complete acid trip, and I want to say that I loved almost every minute of the craziness that happened here. Okay, now I've stopped talking about spoilers. That's all I needed to get off my chest, and while it's not perfect or an astounding, breathtaking adventure, I mean, it's a Dora movie, what do you expect? I had low expectations seeing this movie, in all honesty, even though I kind of figured it would probably be good. I just completely disagree with what a lot of people on the cartoon community are saying about it, and I think they either had way too high of expectations for this movie for some reason, or they just hate the fact that it's a Dora the Explorer movie. Maybe they hate the fact that it's live action. And by the way, this is a million times better than the Lion King remake, like way better. And, you know, I just don't really like the philosophy that, oh, it's different, therefore it's bad. This film is clearly aimed at a young demographic. Like, if you just stop thinking about that so much, I always say that quality doesn't have an age restriction, and just view this as a film, as its own. It's pretty hilarious, and it's a creative acid trip of a comedy. And it'll probably become underrated. It doesn't seem like it's doing that well in the box office, but I personally liked it. If you like Pee-wee's Big Adventure, which is what this movie kind of reminded me of, you'll probably have fun with Dora. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Like always, I don't know how to end videos.